It's such a pleasure to be with you tonight again and with two very, very special guests. The making of Over the Moon has been sheer joy. It started out as a dream to make a movie that was about this very, very legendary character from Chinese culture, the moon goddess Chang'e, who has been apparently living on the moon for thousands of years with her bunny rabbit. And each year, mooncakes are made in her honor. She was so in love with her lover, Ho Yi, that she decided to take immortality pills. That's the background of this legend. And it just seemed like it was really ripe for adaptation to a modern day story that was very relatable. And that was the beginning of the movie that I ended up pitching to Pearl Studios, which was then picked up by Netflix. And this movie came together in the most magical, beautiful way with the most incredible people, the iconic director, Glenn Keane, and a host of others. But I think one of the greatest pleasures for me, a true feeling of gratification, was the number of emerging talent that we could employ on this film, because it is such just a joy to see an opportunity to showcase new faces, new voices, and two of them are here with us today. And I have such admiration for them both. So let me introduce you to them now. One is, of course, the star of our movie, Fei Fei. Her name is Cathy Ang. And she just blew us away with her voice and her personality. And she became just a huge inspiration to the director because of who she is, just very naturally. She really became Fei Fei in the movie and is integral to the creation of that character. And the other person whose contribution can literally not be overstated is Helen Park, one of the composers, the only Asian composer, and someone who brought such a unique sound to the movie. The music and the choreography of this movie is something that I can personally enjoy again and again and again, and I know many have. And I know in households all across the world now, children and adults alike are singing songs and imitating dance moves from the movie. So I couldn't be more pleased to really focus on Cathy and Helen tonight. There have been so many other people that have been highlighted throughout, but this is an opportunity to have more intimate conversation. I'm going to start with Helen because Helen perhaps has not been as much on the circuit as Cathy. Helen, I think the audience would love to know more about your background, what you were doing before we had the opportunity to engage you on this movie. Tell us about your background, please.
Sure. So I was born in Korea, and I've moved around a lot in my life in terms of literally everything, the actual location of where I live, but also in terms of my career path, I would say. So I was born in Busan, Korea, the very southern part of Korea. And then I moved to the US when I was in second grade. I lived in Missouri for 2.5 years. And then I went back to Korea, and I really missed I missed the Western culture that I was exposed to when I was in the elementary school. And I begged my parents to send me back to the U.S. And so there was an opportunity in sixth grade to go to this summer school in Virginia. And it was musical theater summer program. And we did a production of Once Upon a Mattress, like a little school production in Richmond, Virginia. And I played the minstrel because there was no role for me, other than the minstrel, who is very not gender neutral, but race neutral, I guess. But I was so obsessed with it, and I memorized the whole show. I thought my life was changed forever because of that show. And after those 2 months, I went back to Korea, and I I wanted to be a musical theater person. I didn't know what. I thought there was only actress, like there's only actor route in musical theater. So I was like, I want to be a musical theater actor. But my parents thought it was just like a phase, and they just didn't. They didn't take it seriously, and they kind of recommended me go to, more safer route, which is like med school, like a lot of other Asian parents.
They didn't want it. They were hoping it would be a passing fad, right?
Yeah, I mean, they thought I could do both, that I could be a doctor and also like be satisfied with just playing music on the side. But yeah, I started writing songs after that program, and as a hobby, I would say. And during pre-med in college,
you actually went to school.
Yeah, well, pre-med. Yeah. I was also double majoring in piano performance, and I was just like, I need to choose a path and go with it. And I knew the risk was higher for music, but I had to go for it. And so, yeah, I told my parents I'm going to go do music. And long story short, I went to the musical theater writing program at NYU, and then after graduating, I started, interning as a music assistant to Tom Kitt on Broadway. And also during that time, I was starting my first off-Broadway show, writing for the first off-Broadway show called K-pop, which Cathy was in, by the way, and she was great. Yeah. And so that show was a great success, and it was the most nominated off-Broadway show of that season, 2017. And it's headed to Broadway right now. And but that show also gave me the opportunity for someone at Pearl Studio to come and see the show, and they liked my work, and I got brought on. I mean, I just could not be more grateful for the leap of faith. And I was just starting out, and this working on this movie has been a dream. And that's where I'm at right now.
It was perfect.
So such a great learning experience.
It sounds like K-pop was a big influence in your life, perhaps because you were going back and forth in Korea and the US.
Yeah, for me, like Britney Spears equivalent is BoA. BoA is like the K-pop star from my times. My first big boy band crush was not Backstreet Boys. It was H.O.T. They're also the first like iconic K-pop boy band. So yeah, it's definitely been a big part of me growing up. So I thought, it was just such a weird coincidence that I got the opportunity to marry my two loves, the K-pop and musical theater, so.
What do you think about the K-pop craze that's been going on for a while now?
It's not surprising for me because I was kind of in the fandom too when I was little. And so I know I know how exciting that is to be a fan of K-pop, but I was surprised that so many people who don't understand the language at all still are obsessed with it. And I think that's the power of music. I
believe, based on my limited knowledge, maybe that the overwhelming number of hardcore fans, in fact, are not Korean or not even Asian. I mean, it cuts across so many different demographics.
Yeah.
So what is that about, do you think? Because I actually read a really interesting book called The Birth of Korean Cool, which talks about how with the Korean government very, very consciously decided to create culture that could be exported. This all happened after World War II. They had to borrow money from the IMF, and they were very embarrassed about that. And they said, we have to return this money as soon as possible. So they wanted to make a lot of foreign currency. And so they created K-pop. They said, we're going to create a musical form that will be popular all over the world. And at the time, many people thought, well, that's preposterous. How can you do that? But they hired a lot of Western choreographers and musicians. They built all these karaoke bars. They sent a lot of students abroad. And lo and behold, here we are. Yeah. So it worked, and it goes against the grain of how we think of music, emerging from sort of the bottom up. This was kind of a top-down effect. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of training and getting the best of choreographers in the US and in Europe, and best songwriters, and they're really picky about how they produce these albums. And I think it's combination of that kind of excellence and
discipline, very hard
discipline, and I think in American pop it's not the same package. Like in the K-pop, I think music video and the fandom and the relationship with the fans, with the artist, I think it's just so structured in a way that's different than pop music. And I think people who want like a sense of belonging are very attracted to K-pop, because you're part of a group. I think that I know the fans of BTS, they call it the army. Yeah, once you get into the army, it's like you get like such a sense of belonging, and everyone's united in the love for BTS and their music. And so, I think it's kind of addictive.
And what I love about it is that it's really an integral part of Asian culture to have that sense of belonging, to think of the group. Right. And it's nice that something so popular can generate that feeling, because it's very different from the Western concept of individual genius artists who do their thing and they have their fans. But this feeling like, everyone can belong, I think is really nice and distinctly Eastern versus Western, in my opinion. Yeah. So tell us how you ended up working with the other composers. Did you go and write certain songs that seemed more suited to your style, or did you integrate? I mean, it was such the perfect mix of talents. How did it work for you?
So I know Glenn and Palin and Audrey and Jenny, they all met with Chris and Margie separately, and they met with me, and I had written like a spec song for them, and also just kind of my other like K-pop style songs that I've written and produced, and so they were kind of at a dilemma. They liked Chris and Margie as a team. They liked their work, and they liked me, and they were like, "What do I do? What do we do? Can we just merge them together?" And Palin apparently was like, I don't think they do that in this musical theater, world, but we could give it a try. And so they kind of introduced us and asked if we want to work together on the songs. And I was at first a little bit intimidated because they were already a team and I haven't worked with them before, so I just felt like kind of like a third wheel. But they were really welcoming, and they were really receptive to what I had to say and my input. So it was a very great collaboration. It wasn't like, oh, you do this, I do this. A lot of it was, of course we had beginning ideas, but we would all come together and kind of talk through it and edit together. So like the actual culmination of the songs were together in the room, and it was great. It was a great merging of, it was a fusion of different styles, and so I think our soundtrack is very diverse in terms of the genres represented, and I think that kind of represents our collaboration.
Well, it's a fantastic collaboration. I think it's very inspiring, actually, and I think more people should consider this kind of blending of different cultures and different sensibilities, because it can work. And I think often people don't even attempt. So it's so gratifying that on this movie we were able to bring you together with Marjorie and Chris. So just tell us a little bit about what you have in the works right now. Hopefully, you're getting tons of attention. I know that your name has come up in conversations I've had when it comes to composers. Anything that you can share?
I think, I mean, there are a couple of things that are in the works, but I don't think I am allowed to say yet. But one thing for sure is, I'm working on redeveloping K-pop as a Broadway show, and that is taking a lot of work because it was an off-Broadway show, but it was an immersive show, which was like 3 stories building, and we are basically making that into the traditional proscenium theater type show. So that is taking a lot of work because I'm writing songs, but also music producing for that one. So yeah, that's one of the many things that's coming up.
Which theater was it in before, and do you know which theater it will be in when things finally open up, which will be so exciting?
Well, it was in Ars Nova. It was produced by Ars Nova, but it was actually done at ART theaters in New York. And the Broadway theater is to be determined. Yeah.
Look at that. I think people will be craving the opportunity to go in person to see live theater. I know I am.
I miss theater so much. Yeah. I mean, what's incredible about movies, I mean, and streaming through Netflix was that it's globally seen on the same day it was released. And I thought that was crazy because I come from theater background, and it was so, I mean, I cried because my family is in South Korea right now, and I haven't seen them since the COVID pandemic started. And so just to know that they can see it at the minute, they can watch the movie at the minute it was released.
Exactly at the same time.
Yeah, it was just like, it felt like such luxurious experience for me because they couldn't even see K-pop when it was out on off Broadway because they had work. And,
that is for sure. I think one of the silver linings in the cloud is that streaming in general, and then during the pandemic when everything is being done online, it's just everybody's kind of available or more or less at the same time. And this idea of gathering all these bodies at the same place, it's challenging. It's challenging for theater, it's challenging for movie going as well. It's like, how do you gather everyone together? So this easier to gather. It's easier to gather. Well, thank you again. So Cathy, oh my God, Cathy. Seriously, when I see you now, you're forever embedded in my mind as Feifei, because you have the light in your eyes and in your face and your smile and that kind of the curiosity, that the surprise that Feifei often has her in her face, and all this emotion that comes through is. I know that Glenn really was so inspired by you. So how did we know, I think at this point, most people know how you got involved, but what can you say about the experience from just starting out going in to do your first temp track, and then that becomes the song, and what are some of the other experiences that you had working on these songs? So this whole talk is really musically oriented, and tell us a little bit more about your musical experience making this.
Yeah, I mean, my musical experience was actually pretty easy. I would say I kind of got a lot of the music recording done in the beginning. And because I came in, pretty early into the process when they were still doing the storyboard, I got to watch the songwriters work. When Helen talks about the way that Chris, Margie, and her can collaborate, I got to see it in person and really experience them throwing ideas into a room together in Pearl Studios, and just coming up with the most brilliant ways to express the feelings and dreams of these characters. So that was pretty amazing. I mean, musically, as a theater person, being in the room where things are getting created, that's the dream. I always love working on new work. It's my favorite thing as an actress, just because it's such a collaborative process. And And it's a way for you as an actor to learn a lot more about storytelling because you can ask the writers so many questions.
Can you give any specific examples of conversations that were happening or questions that you asked or how they worked together?
Well, I remember, I mean, right until I got into the booth to record Rocket to the Moon, I remember us during that bridge, what could a girl like me possibly do? We were still trying to figure out what the lyric would be. And we came, and I think Helen came up with Imagine the View. And we were, I'm not sure, or maybe she was just giving me the delivery of it.
Yeah, it was a delivery. I think Margie came up with Imagine the View, but I was like, if it could be more like Imagine the View, like more air as opposed to imagine. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, okay, yes. Sorry, Margie. No. But I mean, it's just that kind of, they're right there in the room with you. And so, it's easy, they're already kind of painting things for me. And so we rehearse it, and then you get in the booth a couple seconds later, and then suddenly I guess not suddenly, but a couple years later, I hear it. And with the music, I just understand so much more what the writers were looking for. So that's been a joy. I mean, really, musically, I kind of took a break for like a full year before I started recording some of the music again. Yeah.
Why, intentionally or unintentionally?
Oh, well, we just kind of got most of my songs recorded at the very beginning. Yeah. And then the only new music that they had written for me was based off of Wonderful, which is another one of it's one of the most beautiful songs in the film that Ken Jeong does. And they realized that they had to add that into Chamber of Exquisite Sadness. And it really, that moment where I bring in the song and I say, the heart grows and it knows you can glow. I mean, her journey just comes together there, and the full arc of her now lifting Chang'e up through that song is just so lovely. So I do remember recording with you guys that little tidbit and just crying because it's just so gorgeous. And I also got to do it in like a very high register. I don't know if you guys have heard, but it's like in a high part of my voice. So it's very airy, and it felt like just like an angelic moment musically. That's what I remember.
Yeah, incredibly broad register to begin with. So yeah.
You can sing. She literally does. She has like a wider range than most actresses that I know. That's why I always feel like there's freedom in writing for you. Like, you're incredible. She's so flawless.
So working at the experience for me was that the first cut of the movie I saw was really just drawings. It was just drawings, and it was already so moving. I mean, I was crying because somehow Glenn managed to evoke so much just through these still drawings. But then the next big plateau is when there was music put to it. And it was like, whoa, it was so transportive and so transformative. And it was, I couldn't even believe it. It felt like the movie was complete years ago just because of the music and the drawings. This is before any animation was done or seen. And, so much life was breathed into the characters really early on. I mean, it was extraordinary. I don't think it's that way with every animated movie or every musical, but it was, really incredible to see the evolution, how rich it was from the very, very beginning, again, before animation was integrated. So I think that has a lot to do with your work, Helen, and yours, Cathy. To hear that song was incredible. So the one that anyone can find online is Rocket to the Moon. Cathy, just, your voice just soars that. And as many of the audience may have seen when we have a clip of the recording, your actual recording, and the way your face lights up and is so in the moment of that is literally, it's almost indistinguishable from the character in the movie, who you are. And it's just absolutely lovely. So let me just ask if either of you has anything that you want to add to this conversation about what it's been like. How often do we get to have so much Asian and Asian American talent? People who, the fact, Helen, that you've spent a lot of time in Korea and that you can blend these cultures, and Cathy, your cultural background, and so many of the producers as well as the cast and, people in front of and behind the camera, so to speak. All of it is, what is really, I think many of us have really dreamed of kind of a global work that genuinely reflects our culture authentically. And I think this is one that we can be so proud of in that way. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Cathy and Helen? Cathy, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most wonderful moments of this whole experience has been my family back home watching it. Like Helen said, they were in California, but most of my family doesn't get to see all the theater that I make here in New York, and they got to watch this piece where I was actually sharing, my family's heritage. I haven't gotten to play a Chinese girl, actually.
You've never played one.
Not until Fei. Yeah. And that was so meaningful for them to be able to follow, the way that this family interacts with each other. And during that mooncake scene, I remember my dad was laughing so hard because he has tried, well, his mom like forced him to make mooncakes at one point and he failed, but he was just laughing, just thinking about the memories of it. I mean, it's just, there's so much that he could relate to. And my mom, when I was taking off my rock, there's just a sense of pride to be able to see yourself on screen. And for my parents' generation, I mean, I don't think that they necessarily spent a lot of time fighting for that representation. But now, my little nieces and nephews and little cousins get to see that. And it's just such a beautiful thing that they can live with that all the time because of these amazing streaming services telling these authentic stories and making sure that the creative team, they picked a creative team who cared about that, who really, I mean, Janet, all of the works that you produce, it's about authentic storytelling so that people can fall in love with the cultures of Asian people, which, we can discuss maybe the world needs now more than ever. And so, I mean, it's an honor to be able to play a young, brilliant Chinese girl like Fei Fei.
Yeah, I think our parents didn't dare dream about being able to be seen on camera or even having anything to do with the creative process. I know what it was like when my parents first saw Joy Luck Club, because they were really not too happy that I was going into the movie business. They didn't really even understand what that was about. But then when they were there, were actually extras in the movie, and when they saw it, they could brag to their friends. And, it became a real turning point for them in terms of how they see us. And so I'm sure it was the same for your parents, like the amount of pride. It's like, wow, they probably didn't dare imagine you could go that far and that you could really represent, where they come from. And so it's kind of come full circle around in that way. And it's really lovely. And as everyone knows by now, Asians really still care, no matter what age you are, we really care what our parents think, We're so tied to our families and we really want their approval. What about you, Helen?
Well, for me, I grew up biculturally, as I've said. And so, I grew up watching a lot of K-dramas, like Korean movies, and also American movies and American media. And I found that there is a gap, there's a difference in Korean culture and in the media. I see so many diverse Asians, right? Because of course all Koreans are Asians, but like there's just so much diversity. There's so much flaws. There's so many different types of people going through human things. And then in American media, I found that there's just like a lack of that human experience represented in Asian characters. It was a lot of the times very flattened out, sometimes very redundant, some very the same things kind of occurring repeatedly in Asian characters. And so whenever I see an Asian face in a movie, I would be like so happy to see them at first, but then would be disappointed in how they're represented. And so what I have always kind of set as a goal was to be involved with stories that are humanizing Asian characters, but in a way, I mean, I think musical theater is a really great way to do that, because I think the songs in musical theater type shows, I mean, basically this movie is also a musical theater type movie, right? It has a kind of a musical theater storytelling, but I think that type of song really represents more than just the surface. It explores what you're really going through. Each song is a journey, not just a state of mind. And so I just was so excited about the opportunity to explore these various characters in this all Asian movie. All these characters are so interesting, like Chang'e, Fei Fei, and Gobi, and the parent. What the dad goes through. All of the characters are human, and I wanted to best contribute to that humanness. And I think this movie, it's just, I'm so proud to be a part of it. And I'm so happy that young kids could see, these fully three-dimensional characters who are going through this super universal experience of going through grief. And so not only Asians will see and relate to it, but everyone will see and be and know that they're not alone and they're going through the same experience. And it's just that's just so powerful and necessary.
Yeah, no, I think that is what many of us strive for, is something that is very specific and authentic to our culture, but at the same time has universal themes, and there is obviously a lot of grief in this time. So hopefully this movie helps bring comfort to others, and it opens up a little bit of a window into a culture that we know better than maybe others, and to be able to share that and to have fun with it. And really, it's to show it in a colorful, appealing way. And as I said from the beginning, to showcase incredible talent like Cathy Ang and Helen Park. This is for me one of the most gratifying things. So I thank you both so much for taking the time this evening to share in this conversation. It really has been one of my favorites, because I've wanted to spend more time. Like Cathy and I have been on a number of Zooms, and there might be like 12 people on or something. So everybody gets to talk a little bit. And Helen, I haven't had too much time to talk with you in depth. And this has been just a great conversation. Thank you both so much. Congratulations on the Golden Globe nomination. We'll be watching on Sunday. And I thank Netflix for being so supportive of this project. And I think the fact that it is a representation of something so diverse is something they really applaud. And it's a new era, and I'm very happy for the two of you and many of you in that generation who are coming into your own now. I think there's just more room than ever, and it's such a wonderful thing to see. When I started out in the business, I didn't imagine we would be able to be where we are today. We were all just eking out our own piece of the pie, so to speak. But now I feel like it's a wide open field, and it's just a wonderful feeling. And thank you again, Cathy and Helen.